Ladies, pack your hoe bag.
Who you calling a hoe?
Pour up a drink and start.
That's a little kinky.
Karen.
Streaming 24/7 across all platforms.
24/7.
Yes, sir.
Live on sayitloud.com. Lock it in.
Y'all keep it locked right here.
It is another episode of Say It Loud. And today in our hot seat is Mr. Sir Jax. Hi, Mr. Jax. How are you?
I'm doing quite well. I'm glad to be here.
Thank you so much for being here. You know, I was thinking about you just now, and I was like, I'm not quite sure, how do I introduce you? What name do you usually go by? Like your title.
It's definitely Sir Jax. It's nice and
Sir
simple.
Jax.
It's nice and easy. Yes, ma'am, indeed.
And how did we get the name Sir Jax?
Through quite a few laborious means, quite a few orgasms, quite a few screams. Was a title that was earned, not given.
Oh, okay. Well, I think you need to tell our audience a little bit about who you are, because they're all like, all right, well, Karen, who's Sir Jax? What does he do? Like, why is he sitting here talking to you?
I don't have a problem doing so. So I am Sir Jax. I am born and raised in Houston, Texas. Currently reside in Dallas, Texas. I have been a lifestyle dominant for about 10 years now. Specialize in temperature play, wax play, impact play, all the different mini tool belt pieces to kink and BDSM. I have been an educator, kind of worked in the sex expert field, if you will, and been around for quite some time. And I've been able to share some knowledge, share some love, and ultimately been helping to close the orgasm gap in this country. So
we're going to talk about that in a second. But before we talk about that, because that's going to be a whole topic in itself, can you break down what BDSM is? Like, if someone never heard of it before, or they heard just those letters and didn't know what it was, how would you explain what BDSM is?
Well, the words themselves, depending on who you ask, do interchange just a bit, but essentially it is bondage, dominance, submission, and masochism, right? So depending on, you'll see people switch the letters up just a bit to stand for different things, but essentially it stands for an alternate lifestyle, one that is into, let's say, the extremes, as some people have deemed them, of different types of sexual erotica and involvement itself. BDSM inherently speaks to the power exchange of two individuals, whether that is in the bedroom or 24/7 in a lifestyle type of kind of situation. Either one, it speaks to that exchange of power, and that exchange of who's driving what and who's doing what. And one is submitting, and one is in a more of a driver type dominant seat, or both are going back and forth depending on what your fancy is. And it's about a level of sexual expression and sexual freedom.
That's amazing. I think that's great. Now, how does one evolve to this? Like, how do you find out? You know, I'm sure you've met lots, and I'm talking from a woman's perspective, but I'm sure there's men that have interest in that too. How does one like get to the place where they're like, okay, this is what I enjoy. This is what I think this is. This is what I want to do.
Well, to be perfectly honest with you, I think everybody's overall journey is quite unique, finding their way into this lifestyle. For me specifically, I identify as a cis heterosexual man. So for us, it is a very different trek. A lot of times, especially growing up where I'm from, we have a lot of hypermasculinity that kind of plagues the thoughts and minds of a lot of younger men.
Mhm.
And so a lot of the times, the placement and the idea of being a toy master, for instance, something utilizing anything that is not normal means kind of throws most people off in terms of how they look at things. And so for me, I've been kind of on this track myself because I am also a demisexual, which, to break that down, a demisexual is an individual that finds sexual arousal or a level of sexual stimulation from having an emotional, at any level, an emotional connection with another person. So
Hmm.
it's not strictly based upon the physical. So I've kind of had to discover that. I went through my own levels and trials and tribulations as a teenager to realize it's not just about how fine she is, and then just about, to be graphic, how fat that ass is, or any of the other kind of stuff. It was about how I felt with that particular person in that particular moment. And so, because I kind of yearned for a little bit more to it, I could not, understand in my youth how there were so many different stimuli around me and people that were willing. I mean, you know what it was to be a
Yeah.
teenager. There
Hmm.
was so many things that were happening around you, and everybody else just kind of seemed to jump into it, but I just didn't happen to be with it. Right?
Right.
It wasn't a physical thing. The wind blow the wrong way and I'm rock solid, right? So, but it was in the heat of the moment. I didn't connect the same way I felt like my peers did. And
Right.
so circumstances kind of led to it. My high school sweetheart, we had a bit of a hot discussion, I'll say. And afterwards, she came up to me and she got on her knees and she put her hands behind her back and she looked up at me and said, "What would you have me do, sir?" And I was like, "Oh." Not only was there a shift
Ah,
like in my pants, there was a shift in my heart and my mind. I was like, "What is this? Whatever this is, I need more of
do
this,"
that.
right? So it was from that moment, I feel like I had got, a whole different shot of life. And all of a sudden, I understood the assignment, right? So it just really kind of moved with me and life kind of led to a different place. And 10 years later, I'm learning it, I'm growing in it, and I've, in a lot of people's eyes and my own, become an expert with it. So it happens.
So that's a really interesting story. And there were some things that you pointed on that kind of stuck that I was like, let me stick a pin in this. I think one was the first thing you said about being a demisexual, because I was like, I think I'm that. I think I'm that. I think I'm that. Like, and I think a lot of times, no, because sometimes I feel bad about it. Because just like you said, with men, with women, it's the same way. It's like, oh my God, girl, he's fine. Go jump his bones. And I'm just like, oh, but he's dumb. Like, I can't, you know what I mean? Like, there's no connection. I'm not feeling it. I don't care
Yeah.
how good he looked. Like, he opened his mouth and like, I can't
Yeah.
do this,
And that's a different layer of it. That's sapiosexual, a person that requires a level of mental stimulation before
Yeah,
they can
I'm
find themselves to
definitely demi
sexually
and sapio
arouse.
because I'm like,
Okay. Okay.
yeah, I need emotional,
Absolutely.
but I also need to be
Yeah.
like, bro, like, I can't, like, you gotta, like,
Yeah. And I
you
and I
can't
found
just
a
smile.
couple I found a couple shortcuts around that. So like everybody has to explore their own mind. 80 to 90% of what we do is mental, right?
Right.
It's not the physical. As a physical being, we as humans are very much so sexual, but some of us have different levels and different things that kind of plague how we move and how we think and won't allow
Mhm.
us to fully indulge. So we have to find our own ways around it. And for me, BDSM has been that way, right? Because to me, a level of submission, a level of devotion, a level of like worship, right, in a certain regard and in a certain scene, translate to me as passion, right?
Right.
And being passionate about something, being emotionally enthralled with something is a form to me of emotion.
It
And
is.
therefore, if I'm connecting with that person in that moment, even if I don't necessarily know them from the person down the street, that level of passion and genuine interest translates
Mhm.
well for me, and therefore translates to a level of arousal, which then translates to some very interesting times. So it ends up being a different kind of level for me.
Yeah, I can definitely agree with that. And I can definitely see how people can be turned on by that, by just being able to connect with someone on a passion level and that happens and it's healthy. But I also feel like different people have to navigate who they are and how they kind of go through life and their experiences and what it leads them to so they can understand themselves better so that they can understand what their needs are. Um, so you have this woman and she gets on her knees and
Mhm,
she's like, how
mhm,
can I please you? How can I submit? What does that look
mhm.
like when you're a dom? And what does it look like when you submit? Like, what is submission? What does that mean when you're
Mm.
talking about BDSM?
or her exact words were, "What would you have me do, sir?" Right. I'll never forget that moment for the rest of my life. That was the eye-opening moment when I realized things were different. To be perfectly honest with you, it looks different for everyone, you know. For me specifically, I require a different level of authenticity. It's not just that any person off the street that could look at me and sound as though they're devoted. You really connect on an emotional and spiritual level. I tell people all the time, BDSM as a whole and kink sessions as a whole are therapeutic in more than just the emotional, mental ways. It's a spiritual connection. So to create a level of authenticity in who you are emotionally, and a lot of times to make that come across with absolute clarity mentally, there's a level of spiritual enthrallment that has to be there as well. So whether that is kneeling, whether that is doing certain levels of acts of service, there has to be a genuine and an authentic buy-in and involvement in what you're doing for it to really translate to the other person as a level of passion and as an act of them submitting to you. So for me, that submission in itself is a level of power exchange, and whether that is what's called PE for short, or TP, which is total power exchange, that is a variety of different ways that looks like. That can be just simply in the bedroom, which is more so referred to as tops and bottoms. Individuals that will be leading and individuals that be following when it's simply in the bedroom, or if you're looking at the translation of 24/7, we're more so having a conversation about being a Dom and being a submissive, right? Dom being a title that in itself is effectively earned. Submission is not something that you can coerce. It's not something that you can swindle. It's not something that you can finesse. It's something that is dedicated about the compass and the shining specific example of who you are as a person. For myself, being a man,
Mhm.
that you feel as though the way in which I move and who I am and the things that embody me as a person is worthy of that submission, and for you to follow my leadership. And
Right.
so for me, as a lifestyle dominant, that's a 24/7 thing. So that moves into all parts of your life. That is emotional, that's spiritual, that's mental, that's financial, all parts of that. You come to me with every single portion of where life is, and I guide you on the levels in which I want you to vibrate so that you become the best version of yourself. I tell people all the time, I don't dom for my ego. I've always had attention. I've always had
Right.
individuals that looked at me a certain type of way, thankfully, but I dawned to change lives. It's about being involved at a certain level and creating such a fostering environment for your growth that you allow for this individual to create and foster and mold the best version of who you are. So yeah.
Mm.
And
That's
you
really
catch
deep.
quite a few orgasms along the way.
That's really deep. I never really thought about it like that. Like I thought about it like, a lot of times you hear about it and it leads to sex and submission and bondage and all of those kind of cool, fun things in the bedroom. We don't really talk about what that looks like outside of the bedroom and what that looks like in a healthy relationship between two people who want to be in that relationship and whatever that relationship is and making it work at that level. So I think it's really important that those conversations are had. But how do you have that conversation with someone that you're dating? Like, do you only date women that, let's just say you were dating someone, I don't know your situation, but let's say you were dating, so you meet someone and you're a Dom and then she's going to submit and it's full time. Like, do you have that conversation? Like, when do you have that conversation and how does something like that look?
So
And because I don't know how
it's
women all receive that. Like, do women all say,
no,
yes, I'm going to submit? Or is it just like, bro, like, what are you
no,
talking about?
it's a variety. It's probably just as varying as there are people underneath the sun. Everybody's at a different place in their life. Everybody's had different types of past life experiences as a whole. So everybody kind of comes in at a different space. So for me, there's a process, very much so a intricate process of how this works. I will say that over the years, it kind of developed differently for me. I am ethically non-monogamous, right? So for me, it's not been the traditional monogamous road, but it has not always been that way. At one point in time, I would have girlfriends who, what we call in the lifestyle as being vanilla, who just, loved who I was as a person. They loved being, my girlfriend. I was their boyfriend, but they knew there was a part of my life that they just did not participate in. And they were perfectly fine with me having, submissives and individuals that I did delve into those parts of my life with, as long as they felt, fine in who they were. It was kind of a don't ask, don't tell type thing. They knew that that wasn't their thing and they were fine with it. And so on the other end of the spectrum, there were women who you would see as being vanilla, or when they know a little something about a little something, you say that they're rocky road, right? So it's a little different. But when they know a little something about things, they a word used in the community is that you swirl them, right? So when they know a little something, you can allow for the opportunity for that wealth of knowledge to grow, that they can do more, learn more about what their kinks are, what their soft limits and the hard limits, and things that they thought only in the deepest parts of their minds. How can we bring those desires into fruition? And I really find that, specifically with me, because I do in 99.9% of cases deal with Black women, a greater portion of them are very much so open in a lot of aspects to exploring what that really means. Most of them feel like their sexual experience and sexual liberty has been stifled. So when you start to talk to them about toys, and you start to talk to them about different types of fellatio and cunnilingus patterns of things, when you start talking about articles and learning and like digging deep into things, they be like, wait, what? You know what I mean? They
Right.
questioning like, wait a second, you focused on doing what? Like, and so a lot of that spurs different types of conversation, which fosters a completely different type of relation, sexually, which opens up for a myriad of different ways that that person can now explore what does submission look like. And so you kind of develop those patterns with individuals as that goes. And, she realizes that there's a lot of different, trauma responses and things of that nature that have happened. And those things can be thwarted with the right person, right? They can be learned through and grown through with the right person. If there's an individual that truly has that level of moral compass and leadership, they can let those types of walls down and find themselves not only free in the bedrooms, but finding themselves walking around free throughout the rest of the world. So it's a process, right? And in short, there's no specific way of the process, but everybody kind of expounds and enjoys differently.
I love it. I love it. It actually really sounds so loving. It does, because it's like, wow, like
Yeah, it
I'm
is.
gonna,
It is.
when you think about it, like I'm going to just help you be a better person and help you understand yourself better, and then give you a safe space, and then, you know, grow with you in that safe space. It just sounds so nurturing to me in some ways. And like I said, there's a lot of people that it's almost like
Absolutely.
this, it's like poking a beehive. It's like, I want to know, and I want to know, and I want to know more, and I want to know more. And like you said, the more you have those conversations with people, and the more they have a space where they're comfortable, the more you're allowing them to grow into their best self, right? And kind of figure out who they are
Absolutely.
and what their path is. So I
Absolutely.
have a question. What? Yeah, I have lots of questions. I have lots of questions. So what? Because you, okay. So because I'm just trying to understand. So you have
Mhm.
more than one submissive,
Indeed, I do.
and do all the submissives, are they all okay with that, like with each other?
Absolutely. The baseline of all of this is honesty and transparency. And I cannot tell you, and I'm not going to get on anybody's podcast and tell you that it's all sunshine and rainbows, because it's not. We all deal with our own level of conditioning. Myself having to eradicate a lot of the hyper masculine toxic imagery that I knew of what a relationship was supposed to be,
Mm-hmm.
that I received out in the world. And so I personally have had to have multiple, I mean, I'm talking about hundreds of hours of conversation with women about where they're coming from. Why is it that you feel a certain level of jealousy? It's not perfect by any means. But I will tell you that it pushes you to a different level of emotional awareness that I think a lot of times people in traditional monogamous relationships never do, because the world supports your monogamous relationship. The world tells you this is how it's supposed to be. So whenever you ask questions, everybody like, stick by your man and that's a good man and you're supposed to make that work. Right. But nobody ever talks about the depth of emotional and sexual and true spiritual freedom that happens when you have all those things aligning the way you're supposed to. So with consistently pushing the envelope of what is fulfilling, what does our love look like? What is the vehicle for our love and our life partnership? By consistently doing that and allowing that vehicle to grow and expand and contract and truly have a life of its own, that honesty and that transparency is the basis of how to you keep all of that together and make sure that you are on the same page as you're living and growing.
That's dope. I love it. So earlier on here, you said that you were into temperature play. What is that? Tell me more.
What is temperature play? Okay.
Yes.
um, where do I start? Because the temperature play is definitely the side love of my life. It
It is.
is, yeah, it is. It's
Why?
amazing because it really covers so much ground. So you're talking about not just stimulation, right? So there's different types of forms of stimulation. You're talking about sensory deprivation, right? Which is blindfolding or bonding your hands behind your back, certain levels of your senses being deprived, essentially. And then with temperature play, it becomes a level of both the saturation of stimulation and the absence of stimulation, right? So everything about an environment can be temperature play, down to where I set the AC to be, down to this ice massage, a steam gun, um, allowing different fire implements to happen, extreme heat, extreme cold. It's a ongoing you functioning in the dark as your skin cells are trying to adapt to all the many things that are happening to you while being stimulated in your erogenous zones, right? So it's your body consistently being confused, gets turned on at the same time and not quite being able to understand what's doing it, what's not doing it, what's happening, what's not going on. I mean, it creates a whole level of a labyrinth of feelings. And the adaptation to such, with the end goal being a level of nirvana, really creates a ongoing piece for you to experience, a whole different level of stimulation. So these are all things that, people talk about, let me suck some dick with some ice, or they'll say like, let me play around with annihilator or something, but like little stimulations, like putting a peppermint in your mouth after like an ice massage, you being stimulated by saying this and then being told to say something, the air is hitting your mouth where I move a specific implement from between your legs, right? But there's something warm that's around your ankle. You're consistently trying to figure out what the hell is happening
Right.
while your body is progressively being more and more turned on, right? So it's just this ongoing puzzle pieces of moving things around and touching with things and your body adapting. I mean, it's amazing. I love it. And I've gotten some really, really good, let's say, outcomes from the circumstance.
So since we're talking about outcomes, let's talk about let's talk about the event that you're putting on. Because I feel like all of this stuff will, because I have questions about that too. Let's talk about this event that you're putting on. Because I feel like
Absolutely.
I feel like it's a thing. I feel like it's a thing. I feel like there's a niche market. Let's talk about it. What is this event you're putting on?
Well, the event is called Shh. It's a kinky weekend experience. It was really just a brainchild idea that I felt like, as far as cishet black men that are dominants go, there was a level of individuals that had not yet really bonded together. I felt like there was a lot of fragmented individuals that were kind of like functioning from a place of ego. And I'm not saying that to downplay anybody in the community because I've seen some amazing things happen within the community. But I felt like there was a bit more of unification that was necessary and needed. I felt like we could cultivate as a whole a space for Black women to really, and women of color to really feel comfortable exploring with um, for, I'm gonna say it, attractive individuals who truly have been experienced and tried and true in what it is that they do to create that level of sexual liberation. And so I felt like, hey, we're going to get together, create a project just in time for Valentine's Day, and we'll be announcing what that particular project is going to be. But since we all gonna be in town doing this, I would love the opportunity for us to invite a few people along with us, kind of create that kinky experience with them as well, private sessions, um, specifically at a beautiful estate, being able to have chef prepared meals and create a fostering and bonding process with 15 lucky ladies to be able to truly bond with themselves, really kind of see us behind the scenes as to what we do, experience the craft of these thousands of hours we put in into truly learning the woman's body, and really just have a good time with us. And so for me, I really came at the fellas to begin with, and I was like, this isn't about money for me, right? This wasn't about us throwing an event and going viral or doing all this kind of crazy stuff. And we've been very well received by the community as a whole. But for me, this was about a cause, right? The proceeds from what we're doing will be donated to a initiative that helps women that are displaced by domestic violence.
I saw
And
that.
so one of the biggest things is that the imagery behind BDSM is it's all about paddles and beating and all this other kind of stuff, which is a very common misconception. But even in the name of us doing this extremely well done kinky things, I wanted to help those who are in a less fortunate place, who've been placed there by individuals who took their lives into their own hands to do things that I feel like are grotesque. So I felt like this was a good thing to do. I felt like it was a great initiative to start. I feel like the world needed it far more than I know. If you can see my DMs right now, I mean, it's in shambles. Like it's been crazy the way we've been received, and so I'm excited about it. And we've really been making some major moves, and it's been literally we're up to hundreds of thousands of impressions now so far with what we've been doing, and I'm glad we can do that in the name of philanthropy and
Yeah.
closing the orgasm gap at the same time, right?
We're gonna talk about that next. But yeah, I think a couple of things. So I saw the flyer for the event, and for those of you that are following me, I will make sure that I post it to get it out there so that you guys can see as soon as possible. But Sir Jax is hosting an event in Texas that is going to cater to 15 women. That is going to include temperature play and BDSM and safe space and good food and aftercare, and just really providing a space for you to grow into yourself and ask the questions you want to ask and have a good time and kind of bring your own awareness to yourself. So I thought that was really dope. But even more importantly, the proceeds from this particular event are being donated to women who are in need. And so it helps two causes, right? It helps the cause of one growing as a person, and then it helps the cause of people who are in need. So I think that's really dope. And I think the work that you guys are doing is really great because it's empowering women. And that's what Say It Loud is about. And men, but it's about empowering us to be our best selves and our most sexy selves and embody who we are and be, proud of it and live it and love it. And so I think providing a safe space for someone to grow, or even you being here on the show, answering the questions and having a conversation, is giving that person who's listening right now the opportunity to say, you know what, this is something I've always wanted to say. This is something I've always wanted to try. This is something I always wanted to do, and spark those conversations in those relationships or even in yourself. So thank you for that.
Absolutely.
I think that's dope. So now my favorite part. How are we going to close this orgasm gap? Can we talk about it?
Absolutely, we can talk about it. I
How are we going
really
to do
feel
it?
like, in a way, it's kind of like my life's purpose and mission, to be perfectly honest with you.
Really?
I do. Among other things, among a lot of other things, but definitely this one. Um, I really feel like it's about changing the perspective of what the narrative is supposed to be when it comes to sex and sexual interactions. A
Yes.
lot of the time, so much of this has been placated by the idea of what is self-serving to the men, that
Mm-hmm.
the
Talk about it.
beginning and the end and every single part in between has been about what the man feels, what the man sees, what the man is stimulated by, instead of paying attention to this very much so delicate, tuned, and just in every way, shape, or form, extravagant vessel that is woman, right? Everything on a
Yes,
woman
you
can
said
be
extravagant
tantalizing
vessel.
and can be stimulated from the literally the crown of your head down to the very tips of your toes, that you are within yourself an orgasmic machine. So I think it's really about exploring not just the erogenous zones, but truly understanding that changing the narrative of it taking 1, 2, 3 minutes worth of something to begin something, right? It took
Mhm.
you, 20, 30, 40 years to get to this moment. So why would not I take my time in helping you achieve this level of beginning, that some prefer to call foreplay, to get you to this point, to get you to a level of two, sometimes three, four orgasms before any type of penetration even begins. And so, really starting that off with that idea that that level of body worship and that level of continuous stimulation is necessary and vital, to in making sure that this is a even exchange even.
Right.
I think that changing that narrative in men's minds is what's going to be important, to truly kind of get to a place where women find a level of satisfaction the way that men do when it comes to sexual liberation and sexual expression.
I totally agree. I think it's twofold. I think it's changing the narrative with men and that mindset in that this is how it's supposed to be. I think even when we talk about being submissive and men understanding that she will submit when you are dominating in a role where she's safe and comfortable and feeling loved and cared for and nurtured, and not just like, yo, do it because I said do it. You know what I mean? And so people don't understand how that falls into that sexual relationship as well. And then I think it's also women and understanding that it's okay for you to advocate and learn and ask questions and grow and stretch into different ways, and being able to understand yourself and what you need. And so I think the narrative on both ends and the mindsets on both ends need to change, so that as a pair you can be like liberated, and open.
Absolutely, absolutely, and I think that that's that indulgence piece that people think that it's all about commands, do this and do that, right? But to be perfectly honest with you, I stand before a powerful, powerful being every time I sit in front of a beautiful woman of color, right? And when I do so, I make the type of commands that I make. I instruct with the type of intensity that I do, because I recognize and I feel authentically that I know that I've done for you, right? I know that I've done the best by you. I've taken care of you in every single regard that I can take care of you. And even before my level of instruction, I know that you've already gotten to a place of fulfillment. So let me help your cup overflow, right? So let me show you what that looks like in a level of, a 6'3", a black, attractive frame, where it is that we need to go with the next level of this level of physical adornment. So that's what it is, right? Everybody cuts to the chase of like telling you what to do, but
Mhm.
it's different. When you show up and you've done your homework and you've done every single part of it and taken care of what you need to take care of, where you command from is a completely different place than where
Okay.
General Joe Blow commands from. Does that make sense? So when I
Yes.
facilitate for that, when I allow for that, when I know for the fact that I've shouldered the burdens of what we do day to day, that I've championed in a different way of leadership in every single aspect. That the moment that I came into your life has improved. You've seen decadent levels of your own emotional improvement, your own level of mental stimulation has completely and totally changed. When I command something, the only response you should have is yes, sir.
I
What else
love
is
it.
there to talk about?
I love it. I think that's amazing. I think it's so amazing. But I want to hear more about closing this orgasm gap. Like, how else can we do that? Like, we're going to change the narrative. What else we're going to do?
I think it all stems back to changing the narrative, definitely. But I think along with that part, it's normalizing certain things, right?
Hmm.
Normalizing bringing toys into the bedroom, normalizing being okay with going to different workshops and talking to people that specialize in things like tantric, people that specialize in different levels of kinks and fetishes, exploring things. Hey, I saw this the other day on Pornhub. What do you think, right? Opening
Right.
up the idea of conversation and conversing because there's no level of one size fit all. You may find somebody that discovers, plugging, anal plugs, and that is the bee's knees for them. And for the next 10, 15, 20 years, trying different plugs, trying different implements is all they're looking for. And that's all they need. And you
Right.
may find somebody else that finds, a dozen plus different fetishes and they want to travel the world exploring and experimenting with different parts of them
Right.
all across different corners of the world. It's about changing the narrative that one size fit all idealism of sex is needed and necessary, and it's all about all hail the penis, right? It's not about that. So that's definitely a big part of it, but it's also being open to exploring what your sexual exploration can be and what that means in a day-to-day facet, right? That may mean not just coming up behind you while you're washing dishes, and kiss you a few times on the neck. It may be that you want somebody to turn you around while you're washing dishes and grab you by your neck, right?
Right.
So it's understanding that how we really and truthfully coexist with each other may be very unique for us. It may look even strange for the individuals that are around us, but it is ours. It is how we relate. And having that level of understanding and normalizing that looks very different from person to person is what I feel like we as a whole and as a people would really, really stand to benefit from internalizing and ultimately shifting the focus in the window of acceptance.
Yeah, I love it. I think that's great. I think that is a great idea. I'm excited for your event that's coming up and to hear more about it and to see how it and just I just think it'll be great. Now, I have a question, Sir Jax. What happens if there's a man that, of course, I have a question. What happens if there's a man that wants to learn how to do this?
Well, um,
Like,
it's a
y'all
hell
don't
of a
have
road.
classes? You're not teaching?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, there are classes. I myself personally have not started that. For a brief moment in time, I was, looking at a few guys and teaching them a few pointers about things, but I personally do not do that. There are countless sex positive and kink positive educators across the US, a lot of them online, that you just have to go to the different parts of Instagram and Facebook to kind of find these different groups and support places to really kind of learn about it. But it's to before that even begins, before you start reaching out and start talking about mentoring and shadowing and all the many ways to go about this journey, the first step is really knowing yourself, right?
Mhm.
You taking a honest, hard look at what you feel like is acceptable. How do you understand sex positivity, right? What level of liberation do you feel like you as a man can have? What level of expectation do you have from the women that you involve yourself with? What level of expectation do you have of yourself to allow for growth and exploration of those that are around you, right? Where are you? Until you have mastered a certain level of where you are and your level of acceptance, and not only being aware of where you are, but knowing the buttons within yourself to push and what type of like mental surgery that you have to get to
Right.
realign and really truthfully change how you're looking at things, you have to maybe be able to really take that honest inventory of self to be able to begin this journey because a lot of what you will learn will be completely and totally against everything you've been conditioned to believe, right? Because
Mm,
we're conditioned to believe so many things that
right.
are common misconceptions, right? The beginning and end of sex is from penetration to when I come. That is a fucking fallacy. That's bullshit, right? And so that understanding in the myriad of different ways that will be kind of shot down, you have to begin that unraveling process of conditioning long before you reach out to somebody about learning different implementations, mastering certain crafts, whether it be wax play, fire play, temperature play, asphyxiation or breath play, impact play, all of those things are for people that are at a certain level of emotional IQ. And until you've mastered a certain level of knowing where you are, you'll never truthfully be able to be sensitive enough to really see another person to the level of foreseeing how to take them or guide them to the levels they need to get to, because you're still stuck at square one, right? So that would be the beginning. If there was somebody that wanted to learn, I would talk to them first and foremost about themselves, because that journey by itself is probably the hardest rung on the ladder to climb up, is letting go of what you feel like you know and opening up your cup to receive the things that are truly of this world.
Wow. Yeah. So I love it. I love it. Thank you so much, Sir Jax, for being with us tonight. I can't wait, like I said, to hear more about it and to kind of like listen to people's stories of how they take this journey and are able to share it. Because I do think it's important, and I do think it's such a growth process, just like any other process in our life. And I love to watch things grow. And I really do feel like that whatever doesn't grow is dead. And we can grow sexually, and we can grow, mentally and physically, and that we mature in so many different ways throughout life, that this can be part of your journey. And it's not, a lot of people think their sexual journey is just one way. And so it gives you the opportunity to look at it outside and really kind of learn who you are, like you said, and question it, and then relearn it, and then create what it is that you want for yourself. So thank you, everybody. Thank you, Sir Jax. Tell everyone where they can find you.
Absolutely. I am on Instagram. It is I am Sir Jax with 2 X's. Same thing on Twitter, and same thing on Facebook. So kind of keep it consistent. Also follow the Gentlemen's Council with an A. And Gentlemen's Council will be putting on this event. Hopefully everything goes well. This is the first time anything like this has been done. So if everything goes well here, hopefully it will be in a city near you. I'm looking forward to
Yay!
it.
Excellent.
I'm looking forward
Thank
to
you
it.
so much, Mr. Jax. Hold on a second.